This week I'm having a Trenta chai tea latte. It's a big drink for a big man like my very special next guest, Cleveland Browns legend Joe Thomas. This is a Cup of Joey with me, Joey Molinaro. Cup of Joey with the third overall pick from the 2007 NFL Draft. Absolute legend in the game, legend for the Cleveland Browns, and even a Steelers fan like myself has to pay a ton of respect to Joe Thomas. Joe, how are you, man?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for having me on your show.
Absolutely, absolutely. So post-football, you're killing it. Post-football, you retired in 2018, right?
Yep, 2018 was my last year, yep.
Okay, and then since then, you've been doing, I know, the Tomahawk podcast with my guy Andrew Hawkins. You've been hopping on TV and everything. Did you always want to get into TV and media after your career?
No, to be honest, I never really thought that was going to be the direction I would head. I knew I wanted to do something because when you train yourself to be a football robot, you're an offensive lineman and all you think about is like, I need to get something done today. I need to get up and work hard. When you're done, like you can't just allow that trained dog brain to do nothing because that's when like the bad things happen. And so I knew I wanted to do something. I wanted to be able to kind of shift priorities, spend a little bit more time with my family that they always get neglected during football season. So wanted to make sure they were still the priority, but I needed something that was going to get me out of bed every day. And it was actually my agent who sort of, when I retired, kind of randomly told me, hey, by the way, you're flying to Connecticut next weekend and you're going to be doing a couple shows for ESPN, whether you like it or not, because they've been asking about you and they would really like you to go out there and you can't say no. I'm like, all right, I think it's probably fair for me to at least try it out, see if I like it. I love football. Mm-hmm. I know I don't want to coach because that's way too crazy and those guys have no lives.
Yeah.
But I definitely wanted to be around the game. And so I thought, maybe we'll give it a shot. So I went out there and, hey, I was surprised. I'm like, this is not that bad. Like, I really enjoy watching the game, kind of sharing some of my knowledge, sharing some insight, maybe busting some balls. Like, this might not be a bad thing. And so it kind of just went from there, and now I'm working for NFL Network. And like I mentioned, got my podcast with a fellow Pennsylvania native, Andrew Hawkins.
Yes.
And, rolling along. Life is good.
Yeah, that's, you mentioned about having kind of like a robot brain as a football player, and then you think of offensive linemen, typically, fair or not, kind of meathead guys that are just kind of, the slobber knockers and aren't going to, have too much personality. And from afar, I was always like, I guess that's Joe Thomas. I mean, he's a legendary offensive lineman. And then all of a sudden you show up on TV and I'm like, damn, this guy he's got a load of personality. I mean, were you always like that in the locker room with media, or did you just unleash once you're away from the game?
Well, I think it's important. And it was, especially when I was younger, it was taught that, you don't want to say too much to the media, right? The evil media, you can't tell them anything. You got to
twist your words,
hold everything close to your vest. Especially early on in my career, I had Romeo Crennel, who was a Bill Belichick, Bill Parcells disciple. Uh-huh. And then we transitioned from one dictator to Eric Mangini, another dictator like Bill Parcells, Bill Belichick, to the point where we actually had meetings where they would talk about what you can and can't say to the media, what you should and shouldn't say, which is kind of normal. But they took it to a new level where they would have fake interviews mocked up with you and the PR staff. You'd have to answer questions. They would video it. Then they would give you a grade sheet on what you said, how you said it, where you can be better, things like that. And so it was really intimidating too, because especially early on in my career when I had Mangini and Romeo, like if you said something in the media, and there are big rules where you can't talk about anybody but yourself. So if they put a microphone in your face and were like, hey, what do you think about your teammate Joey? How do you think he's playing? And if you said anything more than, I don't know, you should go ask him, like you were in trouble, and they were going to call you out in the meeting. Like they were going to say, hey, you can't say anything good or bad or indifferent about anything but yourself. It's always back to me. And so you had to kind of learn to buy into this dictator-like mantra of, I'm just all about the team. I don't want to talk about anybody but myself. The opponent we're going to play next is the greatest team that's ever been assembled in the NFL history.
Yeah.
And so you really kind of see your media time as only a time where you could get exposed or get in trouble by your coaches. Sure. So you definitely resent it. I don't know if you remember back in the 90s when the Denver Broncos were rolling. they had an offensive line that was pretty good, but they actually had a policy to not talk to the media at all. And they would find
like the Mark Schlereth days.
I don't know if he was on those lines or not, but it was like mid '90s. It was towards the end of Elway's career. Mike Shanahan was still there, but like I remember those guys, they would actually find each other if you said anything to the media. And so I don't know how they got away with it, because Marshawn Lynch always got in trouble for not saying anything to the media in the 2000s. But back then, I mean, they wouldn't even look at the media. They would say nothing. Because really, for a lot of guys, they feel like saying anything is just a bad thing.
So along with the array of problems that the Cleveland Browns were having during your tenure, they were more focused on grading their players, what they did with the media rather than their performance on the field.
Bingo. And that's a lot of times I was sitting in those meetings going, really, this is our highest priority right now? Like, I'm not worried about blocking James Harrison. I'm worried about what I'm going to say to the media after the game, after James Harrison has 6 sacks and saws my receiver in half on a crossing route. Like, this is the most important thing to be talking about right now.
Hey, they were just trying to get ahead of the narrative, you know.
That's right.
They were trying to control it and spin it their way. So Cleveland, not too great at football during that time, but their PR was just phenomenal. So you got to give them credit for that, I guess.
PR, 10 out of 10. On the field, less than 10 out of 10.
Sure. But now that you've been retired, and that's one of the reasons that you agreed to come on, I appreciate it. You started out Cup of Joe on clevelandbrowns.com. Is this a weekly thing, bi-weekly thing?
So we thought this year would be good for me to start writing a column for clevelandbrowns.com. Because usually I do a lot of stuff for the Browns during the season from a media standpoint. I do their radio show, I do their TV show. A lot of times when I was at the games, I would do some sideline work. But because of the COVID stuff and the fact that they're not allowing a lot of media at their games, I'm not traveling for Thursday Night Football. I'm not traveling for Browns games. I got more time on my hands, and everybody's kind of looking for content, right? Because the normal stuff's not happening. And so we thought, hey, what better way to kind of share some insight with the fans in a new and interesting manner than to kind of write a weekly column and, you know, spread the wings a little bit with the pen, because they always say the pen is mightier than the sword. So I guess we'll find out.
Okay, and now I obviously love the name for a variety of reasons.
Yeah, I can't imagine why.
One, because we both share the same name, but two, because we both share the same segment, and so I gotta love that. But do you like coffee? Was there inspiration behind that because of that, or was it just makes sense because it's me, that's my name, and yeah?
I'll be right back.
Okay, here we go.
So you were probably wondering, is that the end of the interview? I'm a little
Never had that happen before, Joe.
Nobody has just left. But I have my inspiration right here. As you can see, this is a lovely Joe cup, my coffee mug that I enjoy every morning. So my dear father-in-law, who is a goofball like myself, is a big potter. He's got a potting studio in his garage.
Wow.
And so for my birthday, what a great birthday gift. He made me a cup with Joe on it. And it's really nice and large. It's like 30 ounces.
I was going to say, you could eat cereal out of that for a normal.
Yes. You could put an entire box of cereal in here because I am a big coffee drinker. So I actually do appreciate it. It's got nice thick walls to it. So it maintains your heat, you know, because you can't drink a 30-ounce coffee like you drink a 30-ounce beer when I was in college. You can't just take it to the head. You got to sip it a little bit. But but yeah, it works perfectly. And
are you straight up black coffee? You like a little latte?
I'm a black coffee guy. I like black coffee. Usually my routine in the morning is I like an espresso because I like one shot of caffeine right to wake up. I like bitter flavors.
Love it.
And then I just kind of sip on a couple cups during the morning, and then in the afternoon is the only time I'll mix it up. Sometimes in the afternoon I'll throw a little cream in there. My wife is like a sugar-free vanilla person. Sure. So if I'm drinking a nice coffee, like if I got a little coffee left over, I see you got a coffee right there, I'll throw a little ice on it with a little of that sugar-free vanilla, and that's a nice little afternoon snack. So I'm an all-day coffee guy.
I love it. Did it take you a while to get used to iced coffee? Were you a late bloomer with iced coffee?
I'm a late bloomer. I'm not going to lie. Probably just in the last couple of years, I got into the iced coffee thing because I was really just an all-day hot coffee guy. But then, you know, my wife started drinking the fancy foo-foo Starbucks ones with all like the sugar and shit in it.
Yeah.
But I couldn't do all that sugar. But I did notice that a nice iced coffee on a hot day, it's not a bad thing in the afternoon.
Heck no. And it's so much easier to drink because you feel that pressure with a hot coffee.
Yeah.
You have to find that time of like, okay, this is scalding hot. Okay, this is pretty hot. Oh, all of a sudden it's not hot anymore. You have to find that little window where you can chug it, and that's tough.
Yeah, I find myself throwing my coffee in the microwave at least 2 times every morning, just to make sure it's at that perfect temperature.
Now, and I'm sure as, a lifelong football player, offensive lineman, you've had plenty of times where it's great to have the coffee cup in the morning, but then in a meeting or watching film or something, that then doubles as a spitter. I don't know if you're a tobacco guy.
I was never a big tobacco guy, but obviously a lot of offensive linemen, a lot of defensive linemen, they were big chew guys. But for me, I actually didn't even drink coffee until I got to the NFL. And it was strictly a drug-related thing because I needed that caffeine to survive those long-ass meetings they put you through. Because before that, I was like sunflower seeds, but I ate so many sunflower seeds my rookie year in the NFL, my mouth was like degrading from all the salt. It felt like I was getting like canker sores. So I'm like, I got to find a different way to stay awake. So that's what I was like, all right, I got to drink coffee. But of course, everybody who starts out with coffee starts out with the training wheels, right? They start out with a little bit of sugar, a lot of cream. So it's more of like a sex toy than it is an actual like adult beverage. But then I slowly took the training wheels off, and then pretty soon now I just enjoy a nice black coffee in the morning. And honestly, I look forward to it. When I go to bed at night, I'm like, I can't wait for my coffee.
Coffee. Yep, it's a routine thing. You start it off, there's nothing like it. There really isn't. Do you think, shifting gears here, where do you rank yourself in terms of all-time glow-ups? Because after your football career, I mean, when Joe Thomas popped up on the screen, I was like, damn, not only is he funny, but this guy's looking good.
Damn, son. That's a great point. I can't think of anybody who's glowing more up than myself. Maybe Alan Faneca. I don't know if you've seen him lately, but
usually, yeah.
You know what? He's lost quite a few lbs, and he looks pretty sexy. So it's really something only offensive linemen can do because it's hard to glow up unless you go from like super fat offensive lineman to less fat offensive lineman. I can't think of any other business where you like lose weight as you get older.
It's a really wild thing. You know,
By design,
like, you, Alan Faneca, and like Gucci Mane, the rapper, are like
there you go.
The only 3 people that it's like, when they're in their prime and stuff, you're like, okay, they can put it down, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere, it's like, oh, whoa, this is not who I was used to, but good for them. It was always like a good for Joe Thomas.
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm boosting my ego here on a cup of Joey. This has been all good so far.
My sister and my brother-in-law, when I told them that I was having you on the show, they immediately, they're excited, but immediately they were like, you have to ask them, what was it like to be the first O-lineman in NFL history?
A lot of pressure. Let me tell you, a lot of pressure, not a lot of helmets, not a lot of safety gear at the time. But as the game progressed, they learned a lot more about how important it is to not crack your skull open and die on the football field. Started wearing helmets after the leather. Face mask came next. And somehow I was able to glow up even after playing in the NFL without a face mask for all those years. But now, I'm just like everybody else, just watching from home, just pining for the good old days when men were men and nobody wore helmets playing football. And they all died at like 30.
Of all the players that they could have mistakenly put that graphic up on, I feel like they really hit it out of the park with you, though. Just because you're such a football guy, you're Joe Thomas, football name for the Browns. Like, first offensive lineman, that makes sense.
I definitely got a lot of good run out of it. We made some T-shirts in Cleveland that had first offensive lineman in NFL history on there with me and like a leather helmet. And let's say Browns people, like Pittsburgh people, we like a good T-shirt. And that was a good T-shirt.
Yeah, absolutely. I got to wonder about who like the, production assistant or like the intern who messed up on that. Like if they tell people at the bars, they're like, that Joe Thomas graphic. That was me.
That was me, man. No, it was good. In the preseason, it's kind of probably a little bit of a joke for people in production, like it is for players on the field. Like, we'll just let that slide. See what happens.
Tune up. It's good. It's good PR.
Everybody notices.
Yeah, people can run with it. Get Fox or whoever the hell it was out there a little bit more. That's hilarious. Well, this is going to air. It's going to air on Monday, so not this one. Obviously, next Monday. So Browns, Bengals on Thursday Night Football. Rough go for the Browns in week 1. Help me out, man. What's going on with Baker? Is this going to work?
Yeah, so week 1, concerning. Last year, he struggled, but I think a lot of the blame, rightly so, was placed on his protection. Offensive line did not do a great job protecting him. Coaching staff maybe didn't do a great job putting together an offense that fit Baker all that well. And so there was a lot of excuses kind of baked into the cake for him. No pun intended.
Nice. Perfect media there. You're a total media guy.
Boom. No pun intended. Baked into the cake. But this year, offensive line much improved. They got Jed Wills in the first round as a left tackle. They got Jack Conklin in free agency. Paid him a bunch of money. So actually the offensive line, week 1, performed very well. Did a nice job. And it didn't seem like Baker was confident in his throws. It seemed like he was kind of staring down receivers. He just didn't look comfortable, which, to be on his side a little bit, he had practically no practice because of the COVID offseason.
Yeah.
So he's really kind of behind the 8 ball as far as learning a new offense goes and getting on the same page with his receivers. But you would expect, now that the season has started and that he's getting more experience in this offense every week, you're going to see a steady progression where he's more comfortable. He's going to start moving the football down the field. He's going to start making some of those throws that he did his rookie season that made everybody in Cleveland go bananas about the future. This is really an important year for Baker, right? Third year, first year, great. Second year, not so great. Third year, it's kind of like, was year 1 who you really were, or was year 2 who you really were? Because after year 3, in year 4, teams have to make a decision about you because of the rookie salaries. You have a 4-year deal with a 5th-year option. And so in his 4th year, if he does a great job this year, they might extend him, give him that long-term deal. If he doesn't do so well and they think he's more Baker year 2 than Baker year 1, there's a chance it's a quarterback competition in year 4. And that's not where you want to be if you want to be the face of the franchise, if you want to be that quarterback for the long term.
Yeah, it's such a tough spot for Baker because it's, I look at him and on one hand, I'm like, he's what every kid grew up dreaming to be, right? Like this underdog who, fights his way and all of a sudden becomes the Heisman, and he's undersized and then he's the number 1 pick, right? Like it's even myself, who's a diehard Steelers fan, that's the dream. That's what I wanted to be when I was 13, right? And then, he comes into this situation and the pressure that was kind of unfair. It's just, in a way, I feel kind of bad for him. It's a tough spot.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, us as football fans, we love players that we can identify with, right? As a kid, I loved Rudy because, you can always see yourself as the guy that doesn't have as much talent, that didn't really have what it takes to be a Division I athlete, but you had the heart because you loved the game and you were willing to do whatever it takes for the team. Now, I ended up having a little more talent than you probably did in your football career. Absolutely. So then Rudy wasn't my favorite player and movie ever at that point. But I still see those guys out there that you can identify with. And when you can make that connection, you become a fan. And a lot of people across the country identified with Baker's story, being a walk-on, being an undersized quarterback, doing it with hard work and toughness and a little bit of swagger.
Right.
Everybody in America that maybe didn't have enough of what it takes to play D1 football or get that scholarship thinks man, if a couple things would have been different, if I wouldn't have sprained my ankle in 7th grade, I could have been Baker Mayfield, right? And so that's why you love a guy like that. And that's why he has so many fans throughout the country.
Is there, because obviously you're, still around the Browns and the Browns facility a lot, pre-COVID and everything. Is there a anti-Colin Cowherd, his picture in the hallways with a sign through it that we can't talk about him. We don't put him on the TVs. Definitely not around here. Is there any of that going on?
I haven't seen any of the Colin Cowherd dartboards, but Baker's rookie year, we were in Cleveland and he got in the game, gave a great comeback, won the game for the team, and we had him on the post-game show, and I asked him, I said, "Hey, Baker, what do you want to say to Colin Cowherd now?" And he kind of laughed and said, "Oh, fuck that guy." He didn't say fuck that guy, but he wanted to say fuck that guy.
Yeah.
And the point is well taken, and there is no love lost between members of the Cleveland Browns, specifically the quarterbacks. and Colin Cowherd. But you know what? That's great for the sport. Like us in the entertainment business, having those rivalries between players, between media and players, that's great. It's what makes us tune in when the game is meaningless, right? Which, as a Browns player, I hate to say it, but I've played in plenty of those meaningless games in my life.
It's just funny because, like, obviously with the different impersonations I do of Cowherd, and a lot of them are taking what he would say and kind of just exaggerating it about Baker. Yeah. And so, you know, on Sundays, anytime anything happens with Baker, you know, my feed is just, you know, oh, Joey, you got to rip Baker as Colin. You got to do this as Colin. I'm like, look, I'll let Colin do that to Baker. I don't want to add on too much, you know, but it's just funny how much like the Cleveland and the Cowherd just go against each other. And then me as a Steelers fan is just like caught in this weird space in between.
You're just in this weird space monetizing the world war between those two of them, just going,
Exactly. Hey, you're a Big Ten guy, obviously. Is Big Ten going to play? Are they going to figure this out?
I think so. You know, the backlash after they canceled the season, in my opinion, abruptly and a little bit prematurely. I think the backlash from the players, from the coaches, from the fans, the parents, I think it was justified. And I think the other 3 Power 5 conferences had it right, where it was, we're going to try to play. If something changes, we can always back off. We can delay it. We can say, no, we can't play now. But let's at least head down that path to try to play. It's too important. It's too important for so many reasons. Obviously, the big one is financially. We've already seen a lot of these Big Ten schools. Minnesota, I just saw the other day, they're cutting many sports teams because, as we all know, the football teams at these Big Ten universities and a little bit of the basketball teams, they are the ones that fund the entire athletic program. So they're funding the track and field, the tennis, the cross country, the swimming, you name it. They are supporting the rest of the athletic department. And so without those finances, you can't support that athletic department. You're talking about people's jobs within the athletic department, and you're talking about home games. I think about in Madison, Wisconsin, not having home games. It is so incredibly financially ruinous to all those businesses that rely on those home games, that rely on football being played on Saturdays and having people downtown. Now, even if they play football, you're not going to have the same amount of people downtown in a COVID environment as beforehand. But even having football in a COVID environment is better than not. And I think as we learn more about it, we can maybe navigate this more safely. I think just the way that they shut down as quickly as they didn't even give science an opportunity to catch up with the virus. And I think the NFL is doing a really good job of showing how you can play football safely in a COVID environment with the amount of testing, with the rapid testing. And when players and players' families and coaches are saying, we're willing to accept the risk because we know that the protocols you're able to put around us are going to be good enough for us, I think us in America should say that we have an ability to manage and accept levels of risk that are appropriate for us. We shouldn't punish players if they decide they don't want to play, but if players do feel okay accepting that amount of risk, and as the season wears on, the testing is going to get better, potentially vaccines are going to be there, they're going to do a better job of bubbling these players. I think you just want to give it a chance. And so it's my hope that now the Big Ten administrators or the presidents, when they vote on it and they look and they talk to the medical people, they're going to feel comfortable enough with the progress that we've made since August to say, hey, we feel good because the testing has improved so much that we know there's a less chance that these players get COVID by playing football than there is them just being on campus. So hopefully, fingers crossed, maybe in a month or so, we might be able to see Big Ten football.
You mentioned risk, and what do you say to, because it feels it's all of this is very divisive for different reasons, unfortunately. But in terms of, you know, measuring the risk in, okay, hey, we have these stats that show that this virus, is very unlikely, or this percentage likely to affect healthy people of this age who are these college athletes, as compared to, you know, football is a game of risk. You know this. Everybody who goes out there on the field, every game, every practice, knows that unfortunately just one wrong hit and your life, your career is changed forever. So where do you stand? What do you say again to those people who are on the side of saying these players know that there's a risk in football anyways? There's a risk with getting coronavirus, even if you're not playing football or you are playing football, as compared to, well, even if 2 players get coronavirus, that's too many.
So I'll say that football is an inherently dangerous sport.
Yeah.
And there's millions of people across the country every year that decide the benefits of playing football, for me personally, outweigh the risks associated with it. Look, I played 11 years in the NFL. I had, 5 knee surgeries, got arthritis in both my knees. I've got bone on bone in my knees. I've got bad elbows. I had torn tricep tendon. I've got arthritis in my hips. Like, my body right now with football is way worse than it would have been if I never had played football. However, the benefits of me playing football, obviously financially were there playing in the NFL. But even if I didn't play in the NFL, it molded me as a person. It taught me basic values, hard work, teamwork, togetherness, discipline. These are values that are hard to teach people, and I think they're lifelong important values that you can take with you, and you are a better person because of them. And they're hard to measure. And so things that are hard to measure, a lot of times we discount them.
Yeah.
And so I think in America, the great thing that we have is we have freedom of choice. We have freedom to do things that many other countries don't have. That's why I will say this is the greatest country in the world. We have freedoms unlike any other country at any other time in our history. So I understand there's like an economic pollution argument about like, well, you can get it, but you can also give it to other people. And so you can't just let anybody just go run around getting infected, right? There's like some happy medium on that. And that's why it gets divisive. But from like a purely football standpoint, if a player is willing to go out there and say, I'm willing to risk getting COVID, which NFL players have had that option. And there's been a few that have opted out, but a lot of them decided to play because they felt that the safety protocols, and that's the important thing, the safety protocols that the NFL placed around these players with the amount of testing they get, those players actually, a lot of them have told me they feel safer playing in the NFL because of the amount of times them and the people around them get tested than they do just living a somewhat normal COVID life where you go to the grocery store and you come home, or you just hang around with your neighbors. And so I think it's important that we allow people to choose what they feel comfortable doing. And as a football player, you think about what happens to football players, unfortunately, because of the violence of the game every single year with injuries. And there's players that die, unfortunately, every single year. But because those risks have been around this game for a long time, our brains have been willing and able to accept those risks and be comfortable with them. But because COVID is so new, those risks are new, and we have not yet been able to process in all of our own minds about what level of that risk we're willing to take. And I think that's why, if you listen to what the Big Ten administrators and the presidents had said when they shut it down, that's what they kind of said is, hey, we don't know what the stats are. We don't know where everything's going to end up falling as far as like the myocarditis and the long-term health effects and how many players are going to get infected and can we keep them safe. We're shutting down because we don't know, not because we do know. And that's where it becomes difficult. But that's why I would think the right move would have been just to delay until we get more information. Don't shut it down. Just delay.
Sure. Well, you see with the SEC, I mean, they still have another week until they kick off, and September 26th, they did that. They delayed. So do you think that this will be kind of a tipping point eventually, looking back and saying, okay, COVID and all the craziness that went on with college sports, that's a tipping point for changes to be made to pay college athletes?
Well, I think that may be one of the issues that has kind of been difficult for the college presidents and the NCAA specifically is, if they admit that the reason you play college football and a big reason why you would play in a COVID environment is because financially for the universities and the athletic departments and the schools and the businesses that are supported by those games being played is such a windfall that you can't keep up this ruse that college players are anything more than professionals. I mean, it's a business, right? And so if you admit that it's a business, then you almost have to admit that maybe these players should share in some of the financial windfall that everybody else around them gets. Now, personally, I am not for players getting paid a salary, but I am very much in favor of those players owning their name, their image, and their likeness, and being able to monetize on their performance on the field. If they want to get a car deal, if they want to go sign autographs, if they want to have a marketing endorsement deal, there's really no reason that I've ever heard that is good that says because you play college athletics, some other entity should own your name, image, and likeness. We don't say that about anything else in America. There's no business that owns your name, image, and likeness unless you sign it over for some type of financial consideration. And so I think part of where we are and why it's such a sticky spot is because the NCAA has so long stuck their head in the sand about name, image, and likeness that now this whole stuff about paying players has popped up. And really, when you look at the way to pay college football and basketball or all college athletes, it would be impossible. Because first of all, you'd have to negotiate individual contracts to make it fair. And those players would then all have to have agents. And really, when you look at the players that are valuable to a college, it's just maybe 3 or 4 guys, right? Me as a lineman, I was pretty replaceable until maybe my last season when I was an All-American in college. But for the most part, like if you take a guy at Ohio State and a guy at Pitt, who's the middle linebacker, for the most part, those guys are replaceable. It's just those few stars that are irreplaceable that those teams need that they would want to reward. But if you let them own their name, image, and likeness, they're able to make money on that anyway, and then it becomes a moot point. But you can't go paying every football player the same because they're not bringing the same amount of value. And you can't go paying all the players in sports that are not making any money for like cross country, track and field. I was a track and field athlete. I love track and field. We weren't making any money for the university. We were flying all over the country doing track meets, and there was nobody showing up, and it was not on TV. So we were losing money. So I can't say that I felt like I deserved to be paid on the track team, even if I did go and win a Big Ten championship, because there's just no money in it. And so paying college athletes, I think, is a bad conversation to even talk about because it doesn't make sense. But bring this all back to the COVID thing, like I think part of that, the COVID and paying college athletes is getting muddled together, and college presidents are afraid to go down that road of these are professionals, these are people that are making money for the university.
Yeah, it's really, I mean, we could go on for hours trying to talk about different solutions. You know, I mean, it's just, yeah, there's so many different points, and there's so many different sides, and it's tough. There's really not a lot of clearing. I agree with you, but it's just tough. You know, not a lot of clear answers there. All right, let's get away from all the seriousness stuff for a little bit. Did you know Big Cat in college?
So I did not know him personally, but we were in the same freshman orientation class. And I didn't know that until he told me like 5 years ago, maybe. I'm like, oh, you were that fat kid in my freshman orientation class that was chugging beers. Now I remember you.
Yeah, that's wild. Holy cow. That's and you know, I asked that question not a lot, but like for example, I asked like Rich Eisen if he knew Jon Stewart growing up, because they're both East Coast, like New York kids, and he was like making fun of me because he's like, no, surprisingly, like two people who grew up in New York together did not know each other. And so I know Wisconsin's a that's cool, but it was like, I mean, you guys had to have been there about the same time. I mean, I'm sure he was a big personality, you know, like so that's interesting. So you guys never after the freshman orientation never really ran together?
I can't say he was a memorable personality at that point. He had not become Big Cat. You'll have to ask him. I'm interested if we ever ran into each other at any parties, because it is a big campus. There's 50,000 total students, I think. However, when you're a freshman and you're a freshman from the Midwest, and you probably party together at some of the same house parties. You go to some of the same bars, hanging out with like the same generals-ish crowd. And we were in the same class, so I think he was in the business school too. So we may have bumped into each other a few times. So maybe he remembers it.
Yeah, I will. A couple of huskier guys, like you said, like a drink, football.
The same fat chicks probably were hitting on both of us, so it was probably perfect.
All right, let's finish up here, man, with I call it triple shot, which is a rapid fire, tying in with the coffee, everything like that. Triple shot, kind of rapid fire questions. Number one, favorite Browns quarterback that you played with?
I had a few that I liked. Josh McCown and Brian Hoyer, I would say, and Colt McCoy, 3. I played with 20-something, so you got to give me more than one here.
I know, but I figured you'd be like, oh, I'm going to cop out. I liked them all. They were all.
I liked them all. They were great. No, they weren't all great. I can tell you that much.
All right. Why is Madison, Wisconsin, your college town, why is Madison better than Iowa City? Because I hear all the time, I hear Madison, I hear Iowa City's great. Thoughts?
So Madison has a very laissez-faire attitude. So like as a student going out, it's all about let's just go have fun and nobody cares. There's no judgments on campus. It's all about just finding the fun. Right? Everybody's looking for that fun. And I will say the other benefit is we're sandwiched between 2 big lakes. And so in the summer, getting out on those lakes on some boats, doing some tubing, some boating, some swimming, part-time swimming, skinny dipping. That I think it puts it over the top for pretty much any school.
Yeah, I've been up there one time. I saw my Boilermakers lose to the Badgers up there, but still it was phenomenal. I haven't made it to Iowa City yet, but I was thoroughly enjoyed my time in Madison for sure. And then last one, are you on the Mount Rushmore of Cleveland athletes, professional Cleveland athletes?
No, there's been some unbelievable Cleveland, Northeast Ohio athletes. Obviously, if you're considering LeBron in Northeast Ohio, Jim Brown, obviously those are 2 that are going to be on there. Jesse Owens was like a Cleveland guy. So there's not many spots left over there. Bob Feller. Trying to think.
I was trying to think when I was, thinking of that question. I was obviously LeBron, obviously Jim Brown. Didn't know about Jesse Owens, but then I was trying to think of somebody from the Indians, from the tribe. Yeah. But I mean, back in the '90s, they had some good squads. I'm just not as well versed in.
Yeah, I would say, I'm not a massive baseball guy. But I know Bob Feller was outstanding. Now, how does he compare to, let's say, an Otto Graham, great football quarterback from the Cleveland Browns? How do those guys compare? I don't know. I think if you were going to come up with a Mount Rushmore of Cleveland, Northeast Ohio athletes, you would probably want a little bit of representation from all sports. So you'd probably want Jim Brown, maybe the greatest football player ever. LeBron, maybe the greatest basketballer ever. Jesse Owens, one of the greatest American heroes ever.
Sure.
And then you'd want to probably throw a baseball guy in there. So probably I don't know. Maybe somebody that knows more and help me. So right. So I'm definitely on there, of course. Yeah, absolutely.
If not for all of Cleveland sports, then at least the Cleveland Browns, right?
Yes.
Otto Graham, Jim Brown, and
Lou Groza.
Perfect. I'm not as familiar with him, but I will take your word. He was
good.
Okay.
He was good.
Joe Thomas, man, thanks so much for hanging out and chatting up with me. You're awesome. I appreciate it. This was a great time. Like I said, it'll be out on Monday, and hope you enjoy football season. Let's talk soon, man.
Can't wait to come back when my Brownies beat your Steelers, buddy.
All right. Well,
so we'll see you in 2035. All right.
We'll take that. All right, buddy. See you, Joe.
See you.